Hey guys, and welcome back to Best Practice TV. This is Talking Business, and Jason Falinski stops by. Stay tuned.
Every day there's a new challenge. Every day the challenge is different, and that's what I've experienced in business. Great people, great stories, great insights. That's what we're doing here at Talking Business.
So, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.
We've got lots to talk about. We've got a great viewing audience here of businesses, and that's part of your, aspiring portfolio. So maybe you can tell these guys who you are, and maybe or maybe not, it's up to you. Tell them whose seat you've taken, and have been handed or passed over. What's the word? I don't even know if I'm saying that.
Well, indeed. Well, look, in politics, it's the people's seat. No one has it or owns it.
Understand.
It's a gift of the people. So I was very lucky to be gifted or entrusted with the seat for 3 years. Perfect. And I have to prove myself in.
So on behalf of the people,
2 years' time.
Thank you.
Thank you. As a person. So Cody, it's the people's seat, and in 3 years' time, I guess I get to sit down for another job interview and see if they think I've been doing a good enough job.
Yep.
But look, and that's how I pretty much see this. I was in business. Carewell Health, it's a manufacturer of healthcare equipment and furniture, and we sold mostly to private hospitals and to aged care facilities. We saw a gap in the market about in 2004. People were producing really kind of ordinary pieces of furniture, and we thought that aged care homes and hospitals didn't have to look so clinical. So that's the gap in the market we saw, and we tried to execute on that. We're still around 13 years later, so I hope someone agreed with us, let's put it that way.
You've done the right thing. You've done the right thing. I did a bit of background research, and it does look good.
Oh,
and
thank
it's
you.
certainly, it's obviously a growing industry.
It is a growing industry, yeah.
Massive.
Yeah. So I think the stat is between 2010 and 2020, we had to increase the number of aged care beds or accommodation we had by 80%.
Wow.
And that's before the baby boomers start coming into the aged care market, so to speak. So, yeah.
Cool. So if you go back in your career, like obviously, there was a decision at some point in time to do that, but maybe take us through that, that journey. So.
Oh, sure. So
what have you done?
I graduated in the middle of the recession we had to have, and because of that, literally the only job I could get was in politics, working for John Hewson. Yep. And I've got to say that it wasn't my first choice, but it was my last choice, and it was the best choice I made. Mm-hmm. Because getting an opportunity to campaign and talk to so many people and talk about policy that actually makes a huge amount of difference to people, to businesses, to families, to individuals, to students, is just a fantastic opportunity when you're only 22, 23 as I was at the time. So that was great. But when that was over, I went and worked for the Credit Union Services Corporation. So I was in banking, and I worked on a whole bunch of inquiries and reforms, GST, the Wallace reform, the EFT Code of Conduct, the CLERP 9, which is, the reason you get a booklet that thick every time you open a bank account. I was part of that. I helped create that. No, it's fine. It was the best thing I've ever done.
Yep.
So that was fantastic. Yep. And then I went to work for Insurance Australia Group,
yes.
Which is better known as NRMA. And at the end of that, I was head of mergers and acquisitions for Southeast Asia. So I was flying around Southeast Asia, looking at insurance companies for us to buy and invest in, to try and bring some of our product know-how to car insurance in Southeast Asia. And it was really in that process that I started thinking about the growth industries in Australia, where there was a gap, where the market wasn't meeting the needs of the consumers, and aged care stuck out like a sore thumb. I guess the other thing for my generation, which is sort of Generation X, was that we kind of reached that glass ceiling very early on, where the generation ahead of us wasn't retiring or resigning. And there'd been massive consolidation in the market. In insurance, when I started in 2000, there were like 20 companies. By the time I left, there were 6. So it meant that your opportunity to progress was a lot lower. So it gave you the choice of either sitting there for a while or actually going out and having a go on your own, which is what I did.
Thinking back to when you were 30,
Yeah.
this is a tough question, right?
It is.
That now, because that's a large part of our audience. Large part of our audience that they're thinking about buying houses. They're thinking about starting businesses. They're working in businesses. They're managers potentially. Because they're around that sort of 30 to 35 to 40 demographic. We've just had a really quiet month, which has been April, because literally all of our clients went on school holidays.
Right.
Which was, it's like there's, you line up the public holidays. I think if you took 5 annual leave days, you got almost 3 weeks off.
Yeah.
So
it's not bad, is it?
No, it's pretty good. It's
not many other countries in the world you can get that done.
No, that's exactly right. So, but if you think back to when you were 30, what advice now? You know what you know now.
Yeah.
If you knew that then, what
if I
advice
knew
would you
then
give yourself?
what I know now. Yeah. Look, it's a great question, and I got to say, I would have started earlier.
Right.
I think there are a lot of Australians, in particularly millennials, who are, going to university, doing the second and third degree, and I'm guilty of that myself. Don't do it. Just get on with life. I mean, all you need to know, you can learn out there on the hustings. Absolutely. Because the most important skill I learned was at the age of about 37, 38, when I'd started my own business, was selling. And it's, the ability, and most people see selling as hustling, and that's not what it is. Selling is actually trying to find, realising what value you add and finding someone who needs that value, and doing that as quickly and efficiently as possible. And being honest with people and saying, look, I don't think I can help you. That if you need help, let me know. If you don't, blah. But, when you find someone who you can help, saying, can I help you? That's, to me, what selling's always been about. And I got to say, that skill set I wish I'd had when I was 25, not when I was 37. And I'd be, 12 years younger right now, sitting here. The other thing I would highly recommend for anyone wanting to start their own business is a book called Learning to Grow, I think. Oh no, it's all in the startup. It's all in the startup. And what it does is it compares to starting a business to playing poker. And what a lot of people do when they start their own business is they put all their resources on black. And when it goes belly up and it doesn't work, the whole thing falls over. The key to starting stuff is to make a number of judicious bets across a whole bunch of stuff, see what works, and then put a bit more energy in that. And always think from your customer's point of view as well. So, I mean, the big thing that I have now, where I am now, I think over a lot of other people who've done this, especially on the Labor side of politics, is that I'm constantly reminded to think about what we do in terms of the guy out, the person out on the street. How's this going to help them have an easier family life, educate their kids, start, be able to employ people, compete more in the market, all those sorts of things we talk about, but we talk about it at a theoretical level. And what you guys do here is fantastic, because you take that sort of, principle theoretical stuff and say, this is what it looks like where the rubber meets the road.
Absolutely.
And that's the key thing. I think, anyone who's in business who succeeds intrinsically knows to look at their product from their customer's point of view. And, I think those three big lessons I wish I'd known, frankly, when I was 25 rather than when I was 37. So
that's awesome. And it's great advice. It's definitely something that we focus on here, when you talk about, your business plan, if you like. And, a large part of what we do here, as much as ISO 9001 can sound boring, it's about having a good quality system to deliver your business plan. Not a good quality system, but it's a good quality system to deliver your business plan.
And I've got to say, systems matter. I mean, there's a saying in politics which is decisions get made by those people who turn up. Frankly, businesses succeed by those people who have systems. And that's the critical thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess, we've got an opportunity to talk about what you want to talk about. And one thing that we do ask what a lot of our viewers to do, and we get a little bit of traction with this, is to, if there's a challenge that you have, or there's a question, a burning question that you have, to get a bit of feedback and to get, and to get that in. And I guess, by and large, you are running a business, right? So you're the representative, you're a group of representatives that are running a business, which happens to be one of the greatest countries in the world.
Yep.
And so what's a challenge for you? Like, what's something that you want an answer to?
So the biggest challenge, I think, for anyone in politics these days is how do you reach people in a meaningful fashion to find out what's really of concern to them. So what, a good way of looking at it is ROI, but, what's the one thing that I can do today that makes the most amount of difference? And the fact of the matter is, on the northern beaches at least, people have been taught to be pretty self-sufficient. So if you've got a problem with Telstra, you've got a problem with the NBN, most people will actually look at that and go, I'll fix that. It wouldn't occur to them to ring me. But that's the one thing, that's something I can help with. And how I reach those people and say to them, what's the one thing that I could do to actually make life easier for you I think that's the biggest challenge I face at the moment.
Yeah, and I think, look, whether you're on the northern beaches or not, whether you're anywhere in Australia watching this, is reach out to Jason's office. You jump on the website, you click the button, you make the call, and they'll divert you to, they'll refer you to the right person to ask that question, whether you can or can't help anyway. So I think that's a great piece of advice, and it's certainly the case for me. I'm a business operator and a resident, and that's exactly what I've done. I've had to figure this shit out. I don't like the traffic to the city. Where's my office? Here.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't want to go to the city for a job, so I'm going to make my own job here. It's that simple. It's literally, that's one of the reasons why this business is here. What can we do? Or we could do this. Let's have a crack at this, and here we are. So that's sort of where it's come from. So tell me, what's on the agenda? What are you guys talking about, and what are you guys celebrating at the moment?
Well, I think at the moment we're celebrating the reform to education that was announced yesterday. So that's that's going to look like, the big thing about what we're trying to do in education at the moment is we're trying to end the funding wars. So we spent too much time talking about how we fund education and not enough time talking about how to improve education. And one thing I get back from business a lot is we'd love to employ more people, but the problem that we have is finding qualified people here or anywhere in Australia. So there's this mismatch in vocational education training at the moment. So that's what we're trying to move to. How do we improve our education? Because over the last 5 years, despite record amounts of government spending on education standards have gone down. So we have to arrest that and make sure that we're actually providing people with an education that they can use into the future. Because the biggest thing coming down the line, if you think globalisation was disruptive, well, we've got robotics, artificial intelligence, all that sort of stuff coming down the line. Now, that's going to take away a lot of the boring, menial jobs that human beings have had to do for the last 3 millennia. So it's a really exciting period of time. But at the same time, it means we're going to have to be better qualified and better skilled at those higher end jobs. And if people aren't getting that training and that education, it's a problem for all of us.
So a celebration about the education reforms, and did I hear about some tax cuts?
So tax cuts. So about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we managed to wrestle through the Senate some tax cuts to businesses. So if your turnover is under $50 million, you're going to have your tax rate reduced over the next 5 years to 25 cents on the dollar. Look, and I know that for business to grow, they need to grow their capital.
Correct.
And one of the ways to do that is effectively to borrow money or retain profits. I don't know, I bet you've had this experience where you've thought, oh, fantastic, I made some money at the end of the year, I'm going to dedicate some of that to growing my business, some of that to paying off debt, and then the ATO comes along 3 months later and says, by the way, you owe half of what you got in cash, and it knocks the wind out of your sail.
Oh, totally.
Knocks the wind out of your sail.
There is no incentive. You've got occupational health and safety laws and requirements, which you can go to jail if you breach. If you don't pay your tax, you get some pretty stern phone calls, and it locks up everything else. So to actually stick your neck out and start a business, you literally are mad. You literally are.
And what I was saying to you before is that no government in the world has created a better set of regulations to ensure consumer choice and consumer benefit than competition. And where does competition come from? I mean, Adam Smith was writing about this in 1750. The more people you get into a market, the more competition you have, the better off consumers are.
Absolutely.
The innovation comes from small business.
Absolutely.
I mean, all the big drug companies around the world these days haven't closed down their R&D departments, but they've reorientated where they make specific bets in startups.
Absolutely.
And if the startup stuff works, then they'll buy the whole company. So pharmaceutical companies have realised, actually, as a large company, we're not that innovative, we're not that creative.
That's right.
We're going to create a bit of a capital base for other people who are to do that. So, I mean, the importance of startups and small businesses to the Australian economy and to Australia's future is critical. And if you're not supporting that, then what are you supporting?
Yeah.
I mean, really?
Absolutely, I hear you. So with say the next the next block of time, and we've got a bunch of businesses that get on board. A lot of the businesses that we work with do government work.
Yep.
So they're jumping in, and the initiatives that get whether it's infrastructure works, a lot of what we do gets caught up into like a procurement system, if you like. So, it's like procurement accreditation. So, which is really quite exciting because it means you can reduce red tape. Because we can go in with them and be purely focused on. So a lot of our clients, because they're government suppliers, we focus on making them better suppliers.
Yep.
We focus on the customer experience.
Yep.
So I guess the government is a customer. So you guys coming up with initiatives, then it's getting executed. So what is it that you guys are worried about? What is it that you guys are concerned about that these guys can sort of tweak what they're doing? So for them, it means they're going to be a better candidate to win that work. So if that makes sense. So you're saying your suppliers, right? Because you've got something you want to deliver.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are departments, that do that. So you've got the government people, employees that do that. But then from a supplier's perspective, you're like, guys, come on, get on board and do this thing for me a little bit better.
Yeah.
And you're going to win.
So the biggest thing is digital interface. So I get on really well with Craig Laundy and Angus Taylor, and these two guys are just hot to trot on digitising the entire government. Now the benefit for your clients, and I think for the Australian government generally, is that this opens it up to small business. So in the past, look, we had tenders, but and I know that if you had the relationship and you knew etc., it became very difficult to break existing client relationships or existing supplier relationships. By making it more digital, it removes it from the personal to just an analytical look at what you're doing and how you're doing it. We're making it massively easier to do and massively easier to find. I mean, the New South Wales government, I was in health, half the time you couldn't find the person in the Department of Health who was actually running anything. So like contracts they'd announce the winner before you even knew it had opened. So that's the big thing that we've created a marketplace federally. So any business of any size can get on there. They can bid for these things. They can do it easily and cheaply. So you've probably been involved in tender documents. Been up all weekend doing it, and then you don't even get a phone call. We got it. So the key to it is that we are making it easier, faster, and more relevant as well. So that's the bit. So the thing is, get on to the federal government's digital marketplace. Put in the right key terms, make sure you spend some time. It's worth the investment in time because that'll make it easier for you to get along and start bidding on stuff and start winning work.
Perfect. So I am conscious of time. I'm very conscious of time watching the clock up there.
I've hardly got to the clock.
You can drink that in a second. So this has been Jason Falinski. This has been Talking Business here at Best Practice TV. Thank you, everybody. So we've got a question there. How can Jason and his team, what can they do? How can they get a good connection with you? So I think the best way to do that is to feedback. So you can definitely tag him in a tweet. You can tag him on Instagram. You can send him a private message to his Facebook page, or you can pick up the old dog and bone, one of these things, and call the office. So thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Cody.
It's been absolutely fantastic. And we'll see you next time on Talking Business right here at Best Practice TV. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out Instagram, there's a bunch of great stuff happening. Today's May the 4th, so May the 4th
be with you.
See you soon. Thanks, guys. Bye for now.